The classroom aboard the Galactica Novus hummed with anticipation. Students from various alien species had gathered for their scheduled lesson on Earth culture, a subject of growing curiosity in the Intergalactic Federation. The massive spacecraft served as a hub for education where knowledge from thousands of planets was exchanged. Today's lesson was supposed to focus on human advancements in technology, particularly their remarkable ability to adapt to environments on hostile planets, commonly known as death worlds. The alien students, with their unique physiology and cultures, were already accustomed to the idea that humans, or Deathworlders as they were sometimes called, were an odd species. Known for their resilience, humans had managed to survive on one of the most dangerous planets in the known galaxy, where predators, natural disasters, and climate shifts occurred with alarming frequency. It was no wonder that humans had earned a reputation for toughness and ingenuity. But today's lesson would reveal a different side of humans, one that no alien in the room had expected. As the classroom filled with students, the instructor, Professor Vithun, a tall, thin creature from the planet Zethra, prepared the holoboard for the lecture. His many eyes blinked in rapid succession, scanning the notes he had prepared. Vithun was a specialist in Earth studies and had spent several years observing human behavior from afar. His species, known for their telepathic communication, often struggled to understand the need for physical speech, let alone the peculiar rituals humans adhered to. The room was a kaleidoscope of different species, some with scales, others with fur, some floating without legs, and others with additional limbs. There were creatures with tentacles instead of arms, and some that communicated purely through color shifts on their skin. Despite these differences, they had all come to learn about Earth, a planet both feared and admired in the galaxy. Today, however, the lesson would not be about technology or survival strategies. It would be about something far more unexpected. As the students settled in, a door slid open, and the lone human exchange student, Emily Roberts, walked into the room. Emily was a second-year student from Earth, representing humanity in this prestigious intergalactic program. Standing at average height with short brown hair and bright blue eyes, she looked relatively ordinary compared to the other students. But her presence always seemed to spark curiosity. What caught everyone's attention wasn't just Emily, it was what she was carrying. A small tray in her hands, with what appeared to be Earth food. There on the tray sat a simple breakfast, scrambled eggs, toast, and a glass of orange juice. The smell wafted through the air, immediately capturing the attention of her classmates. Whispers spread across the room like wildfire. The Zergolans, who consumed energy directly from light, buzzed in confusion. The amphibious Quarath clicked their tongues in unison, their multi-limbed bodies quivering with intrigue. Even the normally stoic Thalaxians, who sustained themselves on mineral-based sustenance, turned their crystalline heads toward the strange sight. Professor Vithun, his long, spindly fingers tapping the holoboard, turned his gaze to Emily. "Ah, Miss Roberts, you've brought sustenance, I presume." Emily smiled sheepishly. "Yeah, just my breakfast. I didn't have time to eat before class, so I thought I'd grab something quick." The class erupted in a low murmur of disbelief. Several students blinked rapidly, their species' version of shock. Breakfast? In class? To them, meals were functional, a necessity taken care of in private, often through nutrient absorption systems or simple ingestion of energy packs. The idea of a meal being so essential that it had to be eaten right before class was bizarre to them. One student, a reptilian being named Ziltrax, raised a scaly hand. "Excuse me, human." "Emily," he hissed, his voice raspy. "Why do you bring food to class? Is it ceremonial?" Emily laughed softly, shaking her head. "No, it's not ceremonial. It's just breakfast. Humans eat it in the morning to give us energy for the day." This only deepened the confusion. Vithun stepped forward, his many eyes narrowing. "Breakfast? Humans require specific meals at designated times of the day. Is this some form of biological necessity?" Emily hesitated, sensing the room's growing interest. "Well, not exactly. I mean, it's not like we have to eat breakfast, but it's a pretty common thing. Most people do it to help them wake up and feel ready for the day." The amphibious Quarath student clicked in disbelief. "Wake up? Why does consuming," that he pointed a webbed hand toward her plate, "help with waking up? You do not recharge through sleep alone." Emily took a deep breath, realizing she was now the center of an impromptu lesson on human habits. "Okay, so humans have this thing called metabolism. It's how our bodies turn food into energy. When we sleep, our metabolism slows down, and in the morning, we're kind of running on empty. So we eat to get our energy back. Breakfast gives us fuel so we can focus, think clearly, and, not feel tired." The explanation seemed to bewilder the class even more. For most of them, energy wasn't something that fluctuated throughout the day. Many species present had evolved far beyond the need for solid food as a source of power, relying on natural or technological means to maintain their energy levels. To hear that humans, with all their technological advancements, still depended on such an old-fashioned process struck them as incredibly primitive. Thune's eyes twitched, a sign of deep contemplation among his species. So you consume this fuel to maintain cognitive function. Fascinating. Yet, why not simply use more efficient means of energy replenishment as other species do? Surely humanity has advanced beyond this by now. Emily shrugged, smiling. I guess it's just a part of our culture. I mean, yeah, there are supplements and stuff, but a lot of people like eating real food. It's comforting, you know. There's something nice about sitting down and having a meal, especially breakfast. It's more than just the energy, it's part of our daily routine. The room fell into silence as the alien students digested this information. Comfort? Routine? These were concepts many of them struggled to understand. For the Zergalons, whose energy came from light, food was nothing more than a biological requirement that could be fulfilled in mere moments. The Thalaxians, who consumed minerals, saw meals as an exchange of matter, devoid of emotion. But for humans, it seemed, eating was an experience, something that went beyond mere sustenance. A Quarath student, named Chtar, tilted his head curiously. So this ritual of eating, it provides emotional satisfaction. Emily nodded, her expression thoughtful. Yeah, I guess you could say that. It's like starting the day off on the right foot. For a lot of people, breakfast is their time to gather their thoughts, get ready for whatever's coming, and just, I don't know, feel good. It's not just about the food itself, but the act of eating. It's comforting, especially when things get stressful. Ziltrax's scaly brows furrowed. Stress. Humans experience heightened stress levels without this ritual. Emily chuckled. Some do, yeah. You'd be surprised how grumpy people can get if they skip breakfast. The room filled with murmurs once again. The idea that humans required not only food for physical energy, but also for emotional balance was baffling to the alien students. Their understanding of sustenance was so far removed from these human practices that they could hardly grasp the concept. For them, the idea of food being tied to emotions was completely foreign. Thune, sensing the growing intrigue among the students, decided to shift the focus of the lesson. It appears we have stumbled upon a fascinating aspect of human culture that was not part of today's scheduled lesson. Perhaps Miss Roberts can enlighten us further. Please, Emily, continue to explain the significance of breakfast and other human meals. Emily looked around the room, realizing she had inadvertently become the subject of today's lecture. She took another bite of her scrambled eggs, then smiled. Well, if you're all interested, I can tell you more about human meals. Breakfast is just the start. The alien students leaned in, eager to hear more about this strange, ritualistic behavior of humans that seemed to blend physical necessity with emotional comfort. The day's lesson, which had begun with the intention of studying Earth's technological advancements, had taken a surprising turn, revealing that there was much more to humanity than their reputation as death holders. As Emily continued explaining the significance of breakfast, the entire room buzzed with curiosity. The class was no longer focused on technology or survival. Instead, they were now deeply immersed in something far more personal: human culture. This unplanned detour had everyone, even Professor Thune, completely engaged. For many of the alien students, this was their first real look into the daily life of a human beyond what they had seen in textbooks or research papers. Little did they know they were about to experience a cultural shock unlike anything they had expected. Thune stood in front of the class, his elongated fingers gently tapping the holo board. Fascinating, he said in a voice that quivered with excitement. Miss Roberts, it seems that we have underestimated the complexity of human life. Could you elaborate further? You mentioned that breakfast serves more than just a physical purpose. How does such a simple act connect to human emotions? Emily looked around the room, trying to gauge the level of interest from her alien classmates. It was clear that their confusion hadn't subsided, but neither had their fascination. She took a sip of her orange juice and smiled. Okay, so for humans, eating isn't just about survival. Sure, we need food to live, but meals are also social events. Breakfast, for example, can be eaten alone, but it's often shared with family or friends. It's a time when people can sit down together, talk about their day, and connect. It's not just about the food, it's about the experience. This idea seemed to shock the class even more. Several students exchanged puzzled looks, and a few even whispered among themselves in their native languages. The concept of eating as a social activity was completely foreign to many of them. For species like the Zergalans, whose bodies absorbed light for energy, meals were a solitary affair, done in private without much thought. The Thalaxians, on the other hand, consumed minerals as a form of sustenance, and while they occasionally ate in groups, it was strictly for practical reasons. There was no emotional connection involved. Chtar, the Quarath student, raised a webbed hand again. His green, amphibious eyes blinked slowly as he tried to process Emily's words. You mean to say that humans use meals as a way to bond? Why not simply communicate without food? Is it not inefficient to combine the two? Emily laughed softly, realizing how strange this must sound to them. I guess it is kind of inefficient from a purely logical standpoint, but humans aren't always logical. For us, sharing a meal is about more than just talking, it's about spending time together. When we sit down to eat with someone, it's like we're saying, I care about you, and I want to share this moment with you. It's something that brings people closer. This explanation seemed to stir something in the students. The idea of connecting through food, of sharing not just sustenance but an experience, was both intriguing and confusing to them. For species who had evolved past the need for such rituals, it was difficult to grasp how something as simple as a meal could hold such deep emotional significance. Ziltrax, the reptilian student, hissed softly as he pondered Emily's words. His species, the Vorskins, were known for their cold, calculating minds. They valued efficiency above all else, and the idea of wasting time on something so trivial as a meal was almost offensive to him. Humans are indeed strange creatures, he said, his forked tongue flicking in and out. To think that you would use something as primitive as eating to establish social bonds. It seems highly inefficient. Emily shrugged, unbothered by Ziltrax's blunt comment. Yeah, it's not always the most efficient, but it works for us. Meals are a way for humans to slow down, to take a break from the chaos of life. And breakfast in particular is important because it sets the tone for the rest of the day. For a lot of people, if they skip breakfast, they feel off for the rest of the day, like they're not quite themselves. At this, Professor Vithun stepped forward, his many eyes narrowing with interest. Miss Roberts, if I may, he began, his voice smooth and inquisitive. You mentioned that breakfast sets the tone for the day. Could you explain this further? How does one meal affect the psychological and emotional state of a human being for an entire day? Emily paused for a moment, thinking carefully about how to explain something so intrinsic to human behavior. It's hard to put into words, she said slowly, but breakfast is like a ritual for a lot of people. It's the first thing we do after waking up, and it helps us transition from sleep to wakefulness. It gives us energy, yes, but it also gives us a sense of control. No matter what else happens during the day, if we've had a good breakfast, we feel like we've started the day on the right foot. The classroom fell into a contemplative silence. Many of the students were trying to process the idea that something as simple as a morning meal could have such a profound impact on a person's day. For species that had long since abandoned the need for physical sustenance, or those who saw food purely as fuel, it was difficult to comprehend how humans could derive such emotional and psychological comfort from a meal. Ziltrax, ever the skeptic, wasn't satisfied with this explanation, but surely, he hissed, there are more efficient ways to achieve this sense of control. Why not simply meditate or use a cognitive enhancer? Why rely on something so primitive as food? Emily smiled, appreciating the challenge in Ziltrax's question. Humans do meditate, and there are cognitive enhancers, but food is something we've relied on for thousands of years. It's not just about the physical act of eating, it's about the routine. It's about sitting down with a plate of food and knowing that, for at least a few minutes, we're taking care of ourselves. It's comforting. The word comfort seemed to resonate with the class. Many of the alien species present had their own forms of comfort, whether it was basking in sunlight, communing with nature, or simply existing in a peaceful, quiet space. But the idea that food could provide comfort was something new to them. Char, who had been quietly absorbing the conversation, finally spoke up again. In Kwarath culture, comfort is derived from the natural environment. We spend time in the water, surrounded by the sounds and currents of our home oceans. It is a form of rejuvenation. Is this similar to what humans feel when they eat? Emily nodded, her expression thoughtful. Yeah, I think it's similar. For humans, eating can be a way to recharge, not just physically but emotionally. It's a time when we can relax and take a break from everything else that's going on. And breakfast is especially important because it's the first time we do that each day. The class seemed to be slowly coming around to the idea, though some students still struggled with the concept. Professor Vithun, sensing that the conversation had reached a critical point, decided to take things a step further. I believe it's time for an experiment, he said, his voice full of enthusiasm. Miss Roberts, would you be willing to share your breakfast with the class? I believe a first-hand experience might help us all understand this human ritual more deeply. Emily blinked in surprise. Sure, I guess, but I don't think I brought enough for everyone. Vithun waved a spindly hand dismissively. No matter. The replication systems on the Galactica Novus can easily duplicate your meal. We will prepare enough for everyone to try. The students exchanged curious glances as the professor activated the ship's food replication system. Within moments, The smell of scrambled eggs, toast, and orange juice filled the air as trays of replicated Earth food appeared before each student. The sight was both strange and fascinating. Alien beings from across the galaxy, all sitting down to experience a human breakfast. As the students cautiously began to eat, the reactions were mixed. The Zergolans, who had never eaten solid food before, struggled to comprehend the texture and taste. Chaytar, the amphibious Quorath, found the orange juice particularly strange, remarking that it felt unnatural compared to the pure waters of his home planet. Zultrax, true to form, remained skeptical, though he begrudgingly admitted that the toast was palatable. But as the meal continued, something unexpected happened. The alien students began to talk not just about the food, but about themselves. The class, which had been so focused on the academic aspects of Earth culture, suddenly became a space for personal connection. The students shared stories about their home planets, their families, and their own cultural rituals. In a strange way, the simple act of sharing a meal had brought them closer together, much like it did for humans. Professor Vithun observed all of this with quiet satisfaction. What had started as a lesson on human technology had turned into something far more meaningful, a lesson on connection, comfort, and the universal need for shared experiences. As the class came to an end, Vithun addressed the students. It seems that we have learned something far more valuable than what was originally planned. Miss Roberts, you have given us insight into a fundamental aspect of humanity, one that transcends mere biology or technology. We thank you for sharing this part of your culture with us. Emily smiled, feeling a sense of pride that she hadn't expected. I'm glad I could help. I guess there's more to humans than just surviving death worlds. Ha! The class laughed, a sound that echoed through the intergalactic classroom, bridging the gap between species and worlds. In the end, the lesson wasn't just about breakfast. It was about the power of small, everyday rituals to bring people, no matter how different, together. And for that, both the human and alien students left the classroom with a deeper understanding of what it meant to be truly connected.